Hey guys, it's Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my September wrap-up. I read a total of 9 books, and that was 4 audiobooks, 2 arcs or review books, 3 novels. Let's just jump right into it. And by the way, sorry I kind of look like a mess, but I just got home from work, and I just don't even want to deal with this. So the first book I read, If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo, and I listened to this on an audiobook. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was very interesting. This book follows a girl named Amanda who's a transgender girl who used to go by Andrew. I've never read a book that involves a transgender character before, so it was a brand new experience for me. Some parts of this book are unrealistic, how Amanda can so easily become a transgender at such a young age, and how some aspects of her life were very easy per se, but the author does acknowledge this at the end of the book, and the authors know, like, they say that they're aware of that. I also really like what this book stands for. I did enjoy the romance between her and Grant, even though it was a little bit insta-lovey. I really loved the flashback scenes of her as a kid when she was still a boy, writing how when she was a kid she wanted to grow up to become a woman, and it was just really like beautiful and kind of like heartbreaking, but like good, because you know she got what she wanted in the end. The second book I read this month was 6 Months Later by Natalie D. Richards, and I also listened to this one on an audiobook. I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. This is a young adult thriller, and it follows this girl named Chloe who wakes up in a hospital. She can't remember the last 6 months of her life. This book has so many cliches and just lacks a lot of realism. For example, before the 6 months, she was like a decent average student, right? And then after she wakes up, she has like perfect SAT scores, and she's like gonna be the freaking valedictorian, and like all these colleges are like offering her scholarships and stuff. And I was like, okay, there's this ridiculous love triangle, like this guy that she always wanted to be with 6 months ago, she's finally like with him, like he's her boyfriend in the 6 months later, but then she like thinks that he's kind of like a douchebag, but her parents really like him. And then she has this like crazy crush on this guy named Adam who's like so beautiful and like so broken, and just like she wants to fix him. All of the confusion she had about what the hell happened and why she lost her memory could have been like solved if in like a few seconds if she just asked somebody. Like she didn't like ask people like, hey, like I don't remember anything from the last 6 months, because she was afraid people would like look at her like she's crazy. But it's like, what else are you gonna do? Like, maybe you are crazy. Like, you need to ask people. Alright, the third book I read this month was The Score by Elle Kennedy, and this is the 3rd book in the Off-Campus series, and I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really loved it. Elle Kennedy is just freaking awesome, and she continues to be one of my favorite authors. I really love this Off-Campus series that she's writing. The 4th book like just came out, and I need to get my hands on it now. This book follows a girl named Elle who is best friends with Hannah from the first book, The Deal, and then it follows Dean, who's a roommate with Garrett from the first book, and they're all like hockey players, right? Like the series follows a group of hockey players who are all roommates, and then each book is based off a different roommate. The girl Elle, she breaks up with her longtime boyfriend Sean, and she's like needing a distraction in her life, and Dean is basically the definition of a man whore. And like usually I would kind of like hate characters like his, because guys that are like man whores and cocky like really drive me freaking nuts, but Dean is like so likable. He's just written like so well. I like adored him. This book is really, really funny. Like it might be the most funny in the series so far, especially in the beginning when Elle has this full-blown like sex fantasy over Ryan Gosling. I was like dying, because like literally same. I love Ryan Gosling. Oh my god, it was like the highlight of the book for me. I was like laughing so hard. To be honest, I got kind of bored with the story around the middle. Like somewhere in the middle, it just kind of started to get really slow, and I was losing interest. And then the last third of this book got surprisingly dark and emotional, which this is the first book in the series to actually get kind of dark, which I actually liked. I mean, it felt very realistic, but there was a plot twist that just like darkened the whole vibe of the whole book. It got pretty intense and emotional, and I cried at the end, and whoa, I wasn't expecting that, but oh my god, it was so good, so cute. Elle Kennedy is freaking great. I will read anything she writes. The next book I read this month was The Vanishing Year by Kate Moretti. Thank you so much to Atria Paperbacks for sending me a copy of this book for review. This book just came out on September 28th. I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. It follows this girl, Zoe, who's living in New York, and she's married to this Wall Street guy who's like super rich named Henry. Basically, she was involved in this incident in her past a couple years ago that was like life-threatening, and now those people and those secrets are catching up with her, and it's gonna like wreak havoc on her life. It took me 6 weeks to get through this book. It never takes me that long to finish books, like, ever. So, I mean, it's definitely fair to say that the beginning of this book is definitely slow. It takes a long time to build up and get interesting. The last 100 pages of this book are easily the best part. I mean, there were a lot of plot twists towards the end that I didn't see coming. Honestly, just feel like, though, that this storyline had a lot of potential and could have been a lot better. The next book I read this month was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, I believe I say Crouch. This was my favorite book of the month. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This book is like a sci-fi, thriller, fantasy, and it's just an epic, mind-blowing, mind-boggling, beautiful-ass story. I've been finding it odd lately because I've actually been reading and watching a lot of material that has to do with the idea of alternate versions of yourself living in the world. Like last month I read Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and that book also has to deal with her like living out alternate versions. Like alternate versions of herself are living out different decisions. This book deals with that too, but on like a much more sci-fi level. This book is so unique, and like I've never read anything like this before. Like it's so crazy, and like it'll like hurt your brain when you're reading it because it's so like mind-blowing and hard to wrap your head around, but oh my god, it's so worth it. So it's about this guy named Jason, a scientist who could have been really great and like changed the world, but he decided to stay with his family instead. He wakes up in a world that isn't his. Like his wife isn't his wife, and his son was never born, and he doesn't know what the hell happened. First chapter of this book is one of the most intense first chapters I've ever read. Like it was so good. I was hooked immediately. The writing style is just so freaking gorgeous. Like I was highlighting so many quotes and passages that I just thought like sounded beautiful and like made me feel so nostalgic for some reason, and like I was so impressed with like, this is a sci-fi book, but it's written so beautifully. I mean, I cared so much for Jason as a character, and I wanted him so badly to get back to his wife and son, and you could really feel how much he like loved them. This kind of like low-key reminds me of Breaking Bad, with the way that like Jason is kind of similar to Walter White in the sense that he could have been this great scientist, but he kind of like gave it up and now he's a teacher. It just felt really similar, and it had me thinking a lot about what Walter White's alternate version of himself would be like if he pursued science the way he wanted to. And I love that like at its roots, this is a love story, you know? I mean, I know it's a mind-boggling, crazy sci-fi, but at the end of the day, it's about Jason trying to get back to his wife and his kid, and I think that that's so beautiful. And it makes you question whether or not you're the most happiest version of yourself. Like if you had made different decisions in your life and those versions of you were out there living, would you be jealous of them? And if they saw you, would they be jealous of you? Like, are you the happiest version of yourself? And like, what really matters to you the most? Like, does happiness matter or does success matter? That everything that we see is our reality, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only reality, because everything is possible. So good. And the ending was just absolutely flawless. It was just 5 out of 5 easy stars for this book. I can't stop thinking about it. It's so good. This book I read this month was Sex, Love, Repeat by Alessandra Torre, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars, shockingly. Oh my god, I randomly like picked this book up on a whim one night and I read it all in one sitting, and I totally wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did because it's such a like ridiculous, it sounds like a ridiculous book. This girl named Madison who is dating 2 guys who are aware of the fact that the other guy exists. Kind of picked this book up out of curiosity because I was like, what would that even be like to have a relationship with someone who knows that you're also simultaneously having a relationship with somebody else? Like, I just wanted to know how that would be. And it was actually really good. Like, the writing was good. I fell in love with both of the guys that she was with. The one guy, Paul, is like a surfer, and he's like really kind and really sensitive and good to her. And then the other guy, Stuart, is a CEO who's like obsessed with his job. He's very like driven and intense and like focused. This book had a surprising amount of plot twists towards the end, at least for like a romance novel. I was genuinely surprised by the amount of shit that went on at the end of this book. Appreciate the fact that some of the scenes in this book took place in Torrance, California, because that's where I was born, and I just appreciate the fact that it's very accurate to California, and it doesn't try to sugarcoat anything. Like, I've never read a book before that takes place in Torrance, California specifically, so I thought that that was very awesome. I mean, of course, some of this book was like ridiculously cheesy and really bad, but overall, I'm like genuinely surprised that I didn't hate it. It's definitely a new guilty pleasure of mine. The next book I read was an audiobook I listened to, and that was The Bazaar of Bad Dreams by Stephen King, and I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. This was the first time I've ever read anything that's like a collection of short stories. I really like Stephen King's writing. It just makes me feel so like unsettled, and it's creepy, and it was just what I needed to get me into this like fall mood. I loved listening to the audiobook though, because I love how each short story is narrated by a different person, and so it made it very easy for me to keep track in my head which story was which. And I loved hearing Stephen King himself talk before each story and talk about what inspired him to write that and like why he wrote the story in the first place. I just thought that that was very cool. It gave a lot of insight into each of the stories. There were a few stories that I didn't really care for and I thought were like really random and almost like unnecessary, but my favorite stories in the whole collection are Obits, Mile 81, Batman and Robin Have an Altercation, and Bad Little Kid. Especially Obits, like I was kind of obsessed with it, and I just like thought the idea was like really cool for that one. And this cover is just so gorgeous. Oh my god, I could look at it all day. The next book I read was Beautiful by Christina Lauren. Thank you so much to Gallery Books for sending me a copy of this for review. This book comes out October 4th. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Christina Lauren is another one of my favorite authors, and I was completely surprised when I got this in the mail. I wasn't even expecting it, so of course I read it immediately. I haven't actually read any books in this beautiful series. This is the last book in like a shit ton of books. There's like 10 of them, I want to say, and this is the epic conclusion to the whole thing, but it can also be read as a standalone. This book is about a girl named Pippa who catches her boyfriend Mark cheating on her, and then this guy named Jensen who's like a lawyer in Boston, and they happen to meet on an airplane on the way back from London to Boston, and their first meeting is like fucking hilarious. It's so funny. Like, Pippa's such an awesome character because she has no filter and she's just kind of like unpredictable. Like, you never know what she's gonna say, and she's kind of awkward, and like I just loved her. She was a lot of fun to read about. I also love the fact that Jensen is like 34 years old, which I feel like is a lot older for most like new adult books like this. He doesn't feel like he's ever gonna find anybody, you know, he's like losing hope for sure. I love how real their relationship felt. It definitely was a gradual build because they for the most part couldn't stand each other in the beginning. I loved all the scenes on the road trip in the wineries and stuff. I thought that was so cute. I literally read this entire book in one afternoon, which says a lot because it's 400 pages, and that just goes to show how much I adore Christina Lauren's writing. Like, seriously, their humor is so on point. Sex scenes are written so well. Like, the romance is so cute. Just everything about their books are so good. Like, if you're going into a Christina Lauren book, you know it's gonna be a good book. Alright, and the last book I read this month was How to Love by Katie Cotugno, and I listened to this one on audiobook as well, and I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars. The book definitely turns into a very like melodramatic, ridiculous love story. It's about this girl Rena, and this guy Sawyer, who she's like obsessed with. It takes place like after and before. So the before takes place when they're in high school, and then the after takes place when they're like adults and she had his baby. This isn't a spoiler or anything, by the way. It's like right in the beginning. Like, there were a few scenes that I felt like were really similar to The Notebook. I don't know if that was just a weird coincidence, but I was like, what the hell? Like, Sawyer was such a douchebag most of the time. I didn't understand why she liked him so much, and I thought the main character was such a freaking idiot because she just kept going back to him, even though he like left. Like, he literally skipped town on you. It wasn't really my cup of tea, which was a bummer because I wanted to like it, but this is my second time reading a Katie Cotugno book, and I didn't like the other one either, so those are all of the books that I read in the month of September. I'm surprised I was able to read as much as I did this month because I was actually focusing a lot on my own writing this month, which has been a lot of fun for me to kind of like get back into because, I mean, hopefully this year I'll be able to participate in NaNoWriMo. Like, I'm not making it like my mission yet, but I really hope I can. Like, that would definitely be a dream of mine to actually participate in NaNoWriMo because I've been wanting to do it for years now. And next month I actually signed up for a local writing class that's going to be taking place with a best-selling author as the teacher, so I'm really excited for that. We'll just see how it goes. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you soon. Bye. I don't know. Oh my god, that's a spider. There's a spider outside of my window. Okay. Alright, those are all of the books.